The vast emptiness of space stretched out like a black canvas, dotted with pinpricks of starlight that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. Commander Ji-hoon Park sat in the observation deck of the research vessel Stargazer, his fingers drumming a quiet rhythm against the control panel. He wasn't expecting anything special that day. Most days in deep space exploration were long, quiet, and filled with nothing but endless data streams and routine scans. But this day would be different. The ship's main screen flickered to life, displaying a series of complex readings that made little sense at first glance. Seok-woo Kim, the ship's junior communications specialist, leaned forward. His eyes, sharp and curious, caught something unusual in the pattern of incoming signals. "Commander," Seok-woo called out, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the ship's systems, "we're picking up something strange." Ji-hoon turned, his years of space exploration etched into the lines of his face. He had seen many strange things in his career, but something about Seok-woo's tone made him pay attention. The young specialist's fingers danced across multiple holographic displays, pulling apart the incoming data like a child carefully taking apart a complex puzzle. "It's not like anything in our database," Seok-woo continued. The signals were unlike any communication protocol they had ever encountered. They were complex, layered with rhythms that seemed to pulse and breathe like living things. The Stargazer's crew was a mix of humans from different backgrounds, scientists, explorers, and technicians who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe. They were used to the unexpected, but this was different. The signals carried a complexity that suggested intelligence, but an intelligence so alien that it defied their current understanding. As they analyzed the signals, the ship's main screen suddenly transformed. What had been a jumble of mathematical patterns now resolved into something that looked almost like a vessel. But it wasn't a vessel as humans understood them. Its shape was organic, almost fluid, changing and shifting in ways that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. "First contact protocol," Ji-hoon said calmly, his voice steady despite the excitement bubbling just beneath the surface. Years of training had taught him to remain composed, even when encountering something completely unprecedented. The alien vessel seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Its surface was not made of metal or any material known to human science. It looked more like a living membrane, shifting and breathing, with colors that changed from deep purple to a shimmering silver in moments. Seok-woo's hands moved quickly, setting up communication channels. They had protocols for this. Years of preparation, countless simulations, and theoretical discussions about how first contact might happen. But nothing could truly prepare them for the real moment. The first transmission came through as a series of mathematical sequences, but buried within those sequences was something else, a rhythm, a pattern that felt almost like music. It was as if the aliens were not just sending a message, but performing a complex musical composition that just happened to contain communicative data. "They're trying to communicate," Seok-woo said, his voice a mix of wonder and concentration. "But it's not like any communication we've ever seen." Ji-hoon watched the screen, his mind racing. This was more than just a meeting between two species. This was a collision of entirely different ways of understanding existence, of perceiving reality itself. Little did they know that this first encounter would change everything, not just for humanity, but for the entire galactic community. The universe held its breath, waiting. The diplomatic meeting room aboard the Galactic Confederation's flagship was a marvel of alien engineering. Smooth surfaces shifted like liquid metal, and holographic displays flickered with complex data streams. Commander Ji-hoon Park and his team from the Stargazer stood at one end of the room, facing a collection of alien representatives that looked like they had been pulled from the wildest dreams of a science fiction artist. To the left stood the Krell, a species of crystalline beings that seemed to shimmer and change color with every movement. Their representative was a towering figure made of interconnected geometric shapes that moved like living glass. On the right, the Vorax delegates looked like a combination of insect and machine, metallic exoskeletons that clicked and whirred with each subtle movement. Seok Woo Kim stood slightly behind Ji-hoon, his communication device ready. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. First contact meetings were always delicate, but this one felt different. The aliens seemed both curious and cautious, their multiple eyes, or sensor arrays, fixed on the human delegation. Nobody expected what would happen next. Without warning, a piercing sound filled the room. It was the Galactic Confederation's standard battle alarm, a sound designed to unite alien troops in moments of crisis. To the aliens, it was a mathematically precise signal that triggered immediate defensive protocols. The sound was a complex mathematical rhythm that would typically cause most species to freeze, assess, and prepare for combat. But the humans did something entirely unexpected. Seok Woo was the first to react. As the alarm blared, his body started to move. What began as a small shoulder bob quickly transformed into a full-body rhythm. His feet shuffled, his arms moved, and suddenly he was dancing. Not just moving, but truly dancing. The alien representatives stared in complete shock. This was not the response their battle alarm was supposed to generate. Ji-hoon, catching the rhythm, found himself involuntarily tapping his foot. Another crew member started to nod her head to the beat. The Krell Theory representative's crystalline form actually flickered in confusion. Its translator struggled to process what was happening. The Vorax delegate's mechanical parts seemed to stutter, their complex communication systems completely baffled by the human response. What are they doing? The Krell Theory representative managed to output through its translation device. Seok Woo was now in full dance mode. The battle alarm, meant to be a terrifying signal of imminent danger, had become something else entirely. His movements were complex, rhythmic, combining elements of street dance with an almost mathematical precision that seemed to match, and then completely transform, the original alarm's frequency. More humans joined in. What had started with Seok Woo was now becoming a full-blown dance performance. They were not just moving to the sound. They were interpreting it, transforming it, making it something entirely new. The alien commanders looked at each other in complete bewilderment. Their battle alarm, a signal that had united galactic forces for thousands of years, was being turned into something that looked suspiciously like a celebration. Ji-hoon couldn't help but smile. This was humanity in its purest form, taking something serious and finding joy, finding rhythm, finding a way to connect that no other species could understand. The universe watched, and for the first time, the Galactic Confederation was truly speechless. Seok Woo Kim wasn't just any crew member. Before joining the space exploration program, he had been a legendary underground club DJ in Seoul. Music wasn't just something he heard. It was something he felt deep in his bones. When the alien battle alarm first sounded, something inside him clicked. The meeting room transformed into an unexpected dance floor. Seok Woo's movements were unlike anything the alien delegates had ever seen. What started as a simple shoulder bob quickly became a complex performance that seemed to decode the very language of the battle alarm. His feet moved first, quick, precise steps that matched the alarm's mathematical rhythm. Then his arms joined in, fluid movements that looked like they were fighting the sound, then embracing it, then completely reshaping it. The alien representatives watched in total confusion. The Krell Theory representative's crystalline form began to vibrate slightly. Its sensors were picking up something strange. Seok Woo wasn't just moving to the sound. He was communicating with it. Each beat of the alarm was a challenge, and he was responding with a physical language that seemed to have its own grammar and syntax. Commander Ji-hoon Park watched carefully. He knew Seok Woo's background, but he had never seen him dance like this. It was more than dance. It was like watching someone have a conversation with pure sound. Seok Woo's body told a story. His left foot stomped out a beat of defiance. His right hand traced patterns in the air that seemed to map out complex mathematical equations. His head bobbed with a rhythm that was both precise and completely wild. The other human crew members started to join in. What had begun as Siakwu's solo performance was becoming something else. A group response, a collective interpretation of a sound that was meant to signal danger. "Vibing," one of the younger crew members whispered. "He's totally vibing." The alien translators struggled to process what was happening. Their communication systems were designed to interpret mathematical and logical signals. But this was something else entirely. It was as if the humans had turned a warning signal into a language of movement and emotion. Siakwu's dance reached a crescendo. His body moved faster, his movements more intense. The battle alarm that was supposed to inspire fear was now creating something beautiful, something unexpected, something that completely broke every rule the Galactic Confederation understood about communication and conflict. The Vorax delegates' mechanical parts started to twitch. Their sensors were overloading. They had never seen a species respond to a threat signal by creating art, by finding joy, by turning potential danger into a moment of pure human expression. Commander Ji-hoon felt a burst of pride. This was humanity at its best. Not fighting, not running, but finding a way to transform a moment of potential conflict into something creative and unexpected. Siakwu's final move was something between a dance step and a martial arts kick. As the battle alarm reached its peak, he spun, his body a blur of motion. And then, silence. The alien representatives stood frozen. The human crew caught their breath. The room was filled with a kind of electric energy that no one could explain. Something had changed. And nobody, not the humans, not the aliens, knew exactly what it was. Deep in the heart of the Galactic Confederation's main research facility, a team of alien scientists worked to understand the human response to their battle alarm. They had access to recordings of Siakwu's dance, countless data streams, and sensor readings from the diplomatic meeting. But understanding, that was something else entirely. Dr. Zara, the lead Krell theory researcher, projected holographic images of the human dance performance. Her crystalline form shifted colors as she analyzed the data. Around her, other alien scientists watched with a mix of confusion and growing concern. "This is not a normal response," she said, her translator rendering her thoughts in crisp, precise language. "When our battle alarm sounds, every known species in the galaxy responds with fear, preparation, or immediate defensive action." The recording showed Siakwu's dance again. Each movement seemed to break down the battle alarm's sonic structure, reshaping it into something completely new. It was like watching someone take apart a complex machine and rebuild it as a work of art. The Vorax tactical analysts were particularly troubled. Their entire military strategy relied on sonic signals that created uniform, predictable responses. Troops were trained to react with mathematical precision, each movement calculated, each response measured. But humans did something else entirely. "Look at the neurological patterns," one Vorax analyst said, pointing to a complex brain scan. "When our alarm sounds, most species show increased stress responses, cortisol spikes, muscle tension, fight or flight mechanisms activate. The human brain scans were different. Instead of stress, there was something else. Creativity, excitement, a kind of neuroplasticity that seemed to turn threat signals into opportunities for expression." Commander Ji-hoon Park was called to explain. He sat in a sterile white room, facing a panel of alien researchers. Their multiple eyes, some organic, some mechanical, studied him carefully. "Your species doesn't see a threat," Dr. Zora said. "You see a challenge, a possibility." Ji-hoon smiled. "We've always been like this," he explained. "Humans don't just react to situations. We adapt. We find a way to turn challenges into something unexpected." The alien researchers realized something deeply unsettling. Their battle alarm, a tool of psychological warfare that had worked on hundreds of species for thousands of years, was completely ineffective against humans. Where other species became rigid, humans became fluid. Where other species prepared for conflict, Humans found a way to transform conflict into something else entirely. It was as if the very concept of psychological warfare meant nothing to human beings. The Orcs tactical database began to recalculate. Simulation after simulation showed the same result. Human units would not be stopped by sonic signals. They would not be controlled by mathematical precision. They would respond with something entirely unpredictable. Creativity became a weapon more powerful than any technology. Dr. Zara's crystalline form pulsed with a color that, in Krell language, meant deep concern and growing respect. Humans were not just another species to be categorized and understood. They were something else entirely. A species that could turn a battle alarm into a dance was a species that could do anything. The Galactic Confederation was about to learn a very important lesson. Humanity was not just another species to be studied. They were something completely new. The research vessel Stargazer had become something more than just a spaceship. It was now a living laboratory of human potential, with scientists working around the clock to understand what made their species so different. Dr. Mina Kim, the ship's lead neurologist, stood in front of a massive holographic display. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling apart brain scan data like a child solving a complex puzzle. Behind her, stacks of research papers and alien data streams covered every available surface. It's not just about hearing, she explained to Commander June Park. It's about how humans process sound. Most species hear, we experience. The holographic display showed multiple brain scans. Alien brain patterns were precise, almost machine-like. They responded to sounds with exact, predictable reactions. Human brain scans were different. They looked like complex musical compositions, wild, unpredictable, full of unexpected connections. Seok Woo Kim sat nearby, serving as both test subject and research assistant. He wore a complex neural reading device that tracked his brain's response to different sound frequencies. Every time a new sound played, his brain lit up in ways that made the alien scientists shake their heads in confusion. The human brain doesn't just hear a sound, Dr. Mina continued. It transforms the sound. It finds patterns where other species see only noise. It creates meaning from chaos. The research team had discovered something extraordinary. Human brains processed sonic frequencies like musical instruments. Where an alien might hear a battle alarm as a threat signal, a human heard a potential rhythm, a challenge to be understood and reimagined. Alien researchers from different species watched the experiments. The Krell representatives, beings made of living crystal, were particularly interested. Their own species communicated through complex vibrational patterns, but humans took this concept to an entirely new level. Watch this, Dr. Mina said, playing another recording of the original battle alarm. Seok Woo's body started to move almost automatically. But this time, it was different from his first dance. He was more controlled, more scientific. Each movement mapped out the sound's frequency, breaking it down into physical language. The alien scientists recorded everything. They had thousands of hours of human sound responses, but each new recording only made them more confused. Humans didn't just hear sound. They conversation with it. They played with it. They transformed it. Commander Ji-hoon watched with a mix of pride and curiosity. Humans had always been adaptable. But this was something else. This was turning adaptation into an art form. Our brains are like living musical instruments, Seok Woo explained. We don't just receive information. We remix it. We create something new. The Orcs tactical analysts were running out of ways to understand human behavior. Their computers crashed repeatedly when trying to predict human responses. How do you create a strategy against a species that turns every threat into an opportunity, every challenge into a dance? Dr. Mina zoomed in on a particular brain scan. Look, she said quietly. Most species have a clear line between threat and creativity. For humans, that line doesn't exist. Outside the research vessel, the universe watched. Humanity was proving to be something completely unexpected. Not just another species to be categorized and understood, but a force of pure, unpredictable potential. The Galactic Confederation's main fleet gathered in a massive formation that stretched across several star systems. Thousands of alien ships, each representing a different species, prepared for what they thought would be a standard military simulation. No one expected what was about to happen. Commander Ji-hoon Park and his team from the Stargazer had been invited to participate in a joint military exercise. The aliens wanted to understand how humans would respond to complex battle scenarios. They would soon regret that decision. As the first battle alarm sounded, something remarkable began to unfold. Human ships didn't move like other ships, where alien vessels responded with precise, mathematically calculated maneuvers. Human ships seemed to dance. They twisted, turned, and moved in patterns that looked more like an elaborate dance performance than a military formation. Seok-woo Kim was in the communication center, his hands moving across control panels like a musician playing a complex instrument. Each movement was both a response to the battle alarm and a complete reimagining of its purpose. The alien fleet commanders watched in growing horror. Their tactical computers began to fail. Prediction models crashed. Simulation after simulation showed the same impossible result. Human ships were turning a serious military exercise into something that looked suspiciously like a choreographed performance. One Vorax fleet commander's mechanical voice stuttered through the communication channel. "They are not following protocol," he managed to say. But the humans were doing more than not following protocol. They were creating an entirely new way of understanding conflict. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed to communicate something beyond simple military strategy. Where other species saw a battle exercise, humans saw an opportunity for creative expression. Their ships twisted and turned, creating complex three-dimensional patterns that looked more like an art installation than a military formation. The battle alarm, that precise, mathematical signal meant to unite alien troops, became something else entirely when humans were involved. It was a rhythm, a challenge, an invitation to something more. Alien ships began to pull back. At first, just a few, then more. Then entire sections of the fleet started to retreat. Their tactical systems simply could not compute what was happening. "They're dancing," one Krell communications officer said in disbelief. "The humans are dancing with their ships." And they were right. Human ships moved with a fluidity that seemed impossible. They dodged, weaved, and responded to the battle alarm in ways no computer could predict. Each movement was both a defensive maneuver and a form of artistic expression. Commander Ji-hoon watched the alien fleet's retreat with a slight smile. Humans had always been good at turning challenges into opportunities, but this was something else entirely. The Galactic Confederation's most sophisticated military exercise had been transformed into something no one could have expected: a performance, a dance, a completely new way of understanding conflict. More and more alien ships pulled back. Their advanced technology, their precise calculations, their carefully developed strategies, none of it meant anything against this human ability to transform threat into creativity. As the last alien ships retreated, the human fleet continued their dance. The battle alarm still played, but now it was something else. A celebration, a demonstration of human potential. The universe watched, and for the first time, it was completely speechless. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Confederation looked nothing like any diplomatic gathering in history. Delegates from hundreds of alien species filled a massive circular room, their anger and confusion creating a thick tension that seemed to press against the walls. Commander Ji-hoon Park sat calmly at the center of the room. He was the only human present, surrounded by alien representatives who looked like they might short-circuit from pure frustration. The Krell representative spoke first. Its crystalline form shifted colors with each word, a sign of deep emotional turmoil. "Explain," it demanded, the translation device making the word sound both like a request and a threat. Seok-woo Kim, sitting beside Ji-hoon, looked like he was trying hard not to smile. The diplomatic team had been preparing for this moment. They knew this wouldn't be an easy conversation. Our response was purely adaptive, Ji-hoon explained calmly. We interpreted the communication signals in the most effective way we knew how. The Vorax delegates clicked and whirred. Their mechanical parts seemed to be working overtime, trying to process human behavior. One of them finally spoke. You turned a military exercise into a dance performance. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Dr. Mina Kim, the neurologist from the Stargazer, stepped forward. She had prepared a detailed presentation that would either save humanity or completely destroy their chances of galactic cooperation. Her holographic display came to life. It showed brain scans, ship movement patterns, and complex mathematical models that demonstrated how humans processed information differently. Where other species saw a threat, humans saw opportunity. Where others saw conflict, humans saw a chance to create something new. We don't see barriers, she explained. We see possibilities. The room fell silent. Alien delegates from species that had spent thousands of years perfecting military precision were struggling to understand a species that saw war as a potential dance floor. The Krell-Theory representative's form began to pulse with a color that suggested deep confusion. But how can a species survive, it asked, if it does not take threats seriously? Ji-hoon leaned forward. We take threats very seriously, he said. We just don't let threats define us. We define them. More clicking and whirring from the Vorax delegates. Their tactical computers were still trying to process the human performance in the military exercise. Every simulation ended the same way, with human ships moving in patterns that looked more like an art installation than a military formation. Seok-woo couldn't help himself. He started to tap a rhythm on the table. Several alien delegates twitched, their communication systems momentarily disrupted by the unexpected sound. This is why we're dangerous, Dr. Mina said quietly. We don't just adapt. We transform. The diplomatic room felt like a pressure cooker. Hundreds of alien species were trying to understand a human approach to existence that seemed to break every rule they knew. Some delegates looked angry. Some looked scared. A few, just a few, looked curious. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had turned a potential moment of galactic conflict into a conversation about creativity, adaptation, and the nature of communication itself. The universe held its breath. What would happen next? Months after the great diplomatic chaos, something unexpected started to happen. Alien species began to visit human research stations, not as enemies, not as threats, but as students. The Stargazer research facility became a strange kind of school. Alien delegates would watch human crews work, train, and interact. They were trying to understand something that their entire history had never prepared them to comprehend. Seok-woo Kim found himself teaching the most unusual classes to alien species that had never understood the concept of improvisation. He taught dance workshops. What started as formal research quickly became something else entirely. A Krell-Theory student, a young crystalline being whose name translated to curious learner, watched Seok-woo's movements with intense concentration. Its crystalline form would shift and change, trying to mimic human dance movements. Movement is communication, Seok-woo would explain. It's not just about the steps. It's about the story you tell. Commander Ji-hoon Park oversaw these strange cultural exchanges. He watched as alien species that had once feared humans now tried to understand them. Some failed completely. Others showed surprising potential. The Vorax were the most interesting. Their mechanical bodies were not designed for dance, but they began to understand rhythm in a way they never had before. They started to see patterns where they once saw only rigid instructions. Dr. Mina Kim continued her research. She discovered something remarkable. Some alien species were developing new neural pathways just by studying human behavior. They were literally changing their brain structures to understand a different way of thinking. One day, during a standard training exercise, something magical happened. A mixed team of human and alien crew members faced a complex simulation. In the past, This would have ended with precise, calculated movements. But now, something different emerged. The Vorac's team member moved with a newfound fluidity. The Krell representative found a way to turn its crystalline body into a form of expression. Humans guided, supported, transformed. It wasn't just about solving a problem anymore. It was about solving a problem creatively. Alien military strategists watched in growing wonder. Their old models of conflict resolution were falling apart. Humans weren't teaching them how to fight. They were teaching them how to communicate. "We don't see walls," Ji-hoon would often say. "We see bridges." Some alien species began to change their entire approach to communication. They started to value creativity over precision, flexibility over rigidity, expression over pure calculation. The Galactic Confederation was transforming. Slowly, carefully, but definitely transforming. Seok-woo's dance classes became legendary. Alien species would travel light years just to understand how humans moved, how they thought, how they turned challenges into opportunities. During one particular training session, a young Vorax delegate managed something unprecedented. It moved, not like a machine, but like something alive. Something that could feel, something that could create. The room went silent. Commander Ji-hoon smiled. Dr. Minna took notes. Seok-woo kept dancing. The universe watched, and it was learning something new. 5 years had passed since the first unexpected dance that changed everything. The Galactic Confederation was no longer the same organization it had been. Humans had done something no one thought possible. They had transformed an entire galactic culture. The Grand Assembly Hall looked different now. Where once it was a place of rigid protocols and mathematical precision, now it pulsed with a kind of energy that felt alive. Alien species from across the galaxy moved and interacted in ways that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Commander Ji-hoon Park stood at the center of it all. He was no longer just a military leader. He had become something else, a bridge between species, a translator of possibilities. Seok-woo Kim walked beside him, still the same dancer who had first turned a battle alarm into a performance. But now he was more than that. He was a cultural ambassador, teaching alien species about human creativity. The Krell delegation entered the hall. Their crystalline bodies now moved with a fluidity that showed clear human influence. Where they once were rigid, now they seemed to dance between their molecular structures. One of them approached Ji-hoon, its form shifting in a way that was clearly an attempt at a human-style greeting. "We have learned," the Krell representative said, its translation device rendering the words with a hint of excitement, "that rigidity is a limitation." The Vorax delegates entered next. Their mechanical bodies, once purely functional, now incorporated movements that looked almost like artistic expression. They'd no longer just calculated. They created. Dr. Minna Kim's research had changed everything. What began as a study of human neurological responses had become a new way of understanding intelligence itself. Species across the galaxy were reimagining how they thought, communicated, and existed. The battle alarm that once struck fear into entire civilizations was now a symbol of something else. It represented the moment when humanity showed the universe that there was another way to exist, a way that valued creativity over conflict, expression over elimination. "We didn't come to conquer," Ji-hoon explained to the assembled delegates. "We came to connect." Seok-woo demonstrated. He began to move, his body telling a story that no words could capture. The entire hall watched. Alien species that once would have seen this as a threat now saw it as a language, a way of understanding. The Galactic Confederation's newest diplomatic protocol was simple: always be ready to dance, always be ready to change, always be ready to see the possibility in what others see as a problem. Some species had resisted. Some still saw human creativity as a threat. But more and more were joining. More and more were learning that there was more than one way to solve a problem. More than one way to communicate. Outside the hall, human ships moved through space. They didn't look like other ships. They looked like they were dancing. Each movement was a story. Each journey was an invitation. The universe had expected soldiers. Instead, it got artists, dancers, creators. As the assembly continued, Juhun looked out at the gathered species. Alien representatives from hundreds of worlds, all moving, shifting, changing, learning. The battle alarm that once divided now united. The threat that once separated now connected. Humanity had done something impossible. They had turned the entire galaxy into a dance floor, and they were just getting started.